It's a great personal honor for me to be able to introduce Pamela Richardson. Pamela Richardson is the author of a book that many of you have received as attendees, A Kidnapped Mind. It's the story of her son Dash, who died as a result of a suicide relating to parental alienation. It's a heartbreaking story, a true story. Pamela is an inspiration to millions of targeted parents around the world. She's also hosted television's The Saturday Show and The Vancouver Show, and written and produced pieces for magazines and other television programs. Today, she's a full-time mother to her 2 teenage boys and lives in Vancouver with her husband, David. She continues to work with many school and community organizations, speaking at public and private events, meeting with legal professionals, counselors, and other parents whose children have been alienated from them, as well as the media and other groups, bringing a much-needed awareness of the damage that can be done by alienating a child from a once-loved parent. Please welcome Pamela Richardson.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me? Yeah. Good. Thank you for the wonderful introduction, Joe, and a warm welcome to everyone here today. My son, Dash, suffered years of emotional abuse at the hands of a parent. If a kidnapped mind can save one child from what he lived, then my family's struggle will not have been in vain. Let me be clear. Parental alienation syndrome, or whatever you want to call it, is child abuse. It causes a child a life of trauma, and as in my case, it can kill. When one parent systematically programs their children to recoil from a once-loved parent, PAS is created. Dr. Rena Summer, an expert in divorce and custody, talks about alienators in the foreword to my book as a new and emerging class of dysfunctional parents that do not fit the stereotype of the deficient and ill-equipped parent. Instead, these parents are generally articulate, resourceful, and competent in all other aspects of their lives, except in the realm of parenting. In fact, these individuals might easily be mistaken for ideal parents, except to the properly informed, because they profess love and concern for their children. What sets these individuals apart from other dysfunctional parents is the overwhelming commitment to meet their own needs first. In doing so, they destroy the relationship their children have with the other parent at whatever cost. Programming a child requires 2 things: time and the child's isolation from the other parent. Custody and child abduction are 2 of the vehicles used by alienating parents to gain both of these. Using the same techniques as cult leaders use, children subjected to parental alienation syndrome are taught daily via bad-mouthing, denigration, and outright lies to believe that the other parent is at first unfair, uncaring, unreliable. After a while, idiotic, then evil or cruel, and eventually worthy of complete and permanent rejection. A child will assimilate the destruction of that loving relationship and the new view of that parent in just one way: through self-loathing, rebellion, isolation, and a crushing depression follow soon after. My son Dash suffered years of emotional abuse at the hands of a parent. Dash was not even 5 years old when his father, a criminal lawyer, was awarded sole custody. The courts gave me 50% of the time, but his father used the custody order to whittle away my access. I was given a bogus phone line on which to call Dash, which was connected to a permanent answering machine, then a fax machine. His father petitioned the school to bar me from participating as class parent and told our pediatrician he was to have no contact with me. When Dash's father made himself the soccer coach, my Wednesday and Saturday access disappeared within the space of a few months. Eventually, years of programming and trauma began to manifest themselves. The sensitive, creative, and intelligent little boy began to show signs of learning and behavioral problems. By 9, the child who had wished on a falling star that what he wanted more than anything in the world was for his parents and step-parents to all get along. Now he was saying he was ready to jump out of the second-story window of his school. Parental Alienation Syndrome, or PAS as it is commonly known, is an insidious, destructive, and in my case, extremely dangerous form of child abuse. There are generally no outward or tangible signs of maltreatment, such as the abrasions, bruises, and fractures, which draw the attention of child protection agencies, the police, and other professionals in the caring community. Instead, the wounds of PAS are buried deep inside their hearts and souls of the children afflicted by this tormenting disorder. Except for those families who have experienced PAS firsthand, this disorder goes unrecognized and is largely seen as an invisible problem. Or, worse yet, it's not a problem at all. You may be wondering, how can this be? How can a disorder that destroys children by robbing them of an important love object, of their security, of their sense of identity, be ignored or discounted? There are a number of reasons why, and none of them which, in my humble opinion, holds much merit. Here are just a few that come immediately to mind. 1, the notion that a parent would deliberately and in a calculated manner attempt to emotionally hurt their child for their own selfish gain seems absolutely incomprehensible. This was the same reaction in 1962 when Dr. C. Henry Kemp reported clinical observations. To the shock of the public and caring professionals, Dr. Kemp reported that he observed injuries in children that were inconsistent with the explanations provided to him by their parents. Dr. Kemp's findings formed the basis for what he described as the battered child syndrome. His conceptualization of child abuse led to mandated reporting in most Western countries to protect vulnerable children. Today, we are struggling with having PAS recognized as another form of child abuse. Given society's reluctance to consider that some parents are a risk to their children, it comes as no surprise that the late Dr. Richard Gardner's conceptualization of PAS is now an equally difficult pill to swallow. 2, There are other agendas operating that impede PAS's acceptance. By that, I mean that the groups invested by PAS's non-existence have generated sufficient controversy that they have successfully stonewalled remedies to protect affected children. In fact, by focusing on the semantics of the parental alienation syndrome, the real problem of PAS has been masked. 3. Because PAS is a disorder that arises almost exclusively in the context of child custody disputes, it is understandable that there are other variables that exist, such as spousal and child support payments. Given what is at stake, it is not difficult to see why parents may be motivated to eliminate the possibility of shared custody in order to ensure that such payments are neither owed or paid. What better way to accomplish this goal but to alienate a child from a parent? Nevertheless, the court's focus on the parent's financial obligations in custody disputes is what often obscures the real problem of PAS and what it does to children. And finally, while I do not wish to show any disrespect to the court system, the reality is that family courts are not family friendly. My book, A Kidnapped Mind, explains how the court system failed Dash. And although Dash's case is an extreme and tragic one, this is not the only case where a child has been failed. It seems that the very infrastructure that was created to ensure justice and to protect the best interests of children is that which also allows PAS to grow and fester like a cancer. In its current state, the courts are not equipped to identify the disorder early or stop it in its tracks before any lasting damage is done to the lives of dependent children. As the alienation entrenched even further, Dash took on a significant role in his own estrangement from me, a previously loved parent. At first, when he was 6, 7, and 8 years old, it was small things. Our garage wasn't as big as his dad's. He had a bigger and better treehouse at his father's. Later, Dash would say he wouldn't see me until I stopped trying to get my access enforced by the courts. Later again, as a child not even 12, he would wear his father's clothes to court, a heartbreaking sign of solidarity. After years of programming, the self-estrangement is done to please the alienating parent. As a child tries to wrestle some fragment of peace and security in his or her life. PAS children can't relax. They can't have a childhood. And they are kept poised for battle, appraised of every grisly detail of every access and custody hearing by the alienating parent. Where good parents will strive to keep their children out of such ugly adult affairs, the alienating parents don't. Dash, we were told, had known everything from day one. Dash is going to hear about this when he gets home. It is presented as ongoing proof how imperiled the child is, that the other parent is dangerously close to the gates. Dr. Peggy Ward wrote, "The willingness of a parent to directly involve a child in the litigation should be a red flag that the parent may well be using the child to further his own agenda or hers, even if the child is apparently acquiescent. This acquiescence is actually fear. Children who are undergoing alienation live with constant fear. The alienating parent targets the bond with the other parent and the child and breaks it by making access time with the parent simply fade away. And this is done, at least in the beginning, right under your nose. Various games kept Dash and I from speaking freely on the telephone. After discovering the original number I was given had a permanent answering machine on it, I found out the real house number. It still wasn't easy. I would be told that Dash was out, but then a quiet little voice speaking on the extension would say, "No, Dad, I'm right here." Other times, Dash and I would be chatting happily away. Then Dash would hear the front door open and whisper, "I love you, Mom," and quickly hang up. Physical time together is targeted. Time is simply lost. And the reasons seem so reasonable, but for the underlying pattern of it all. Wednesday nights, wiped out because of soccer practice. Friday dinner, because the children are tired from school and homework. Saturdays, because there's a soccer game, a party, a sleepover. Sometimes it's more overt. I was told by a neighbor that a cry would go up when I arrived to pick Dash up. "Dash, it's your mom, run and hide. You don't want to go with her." Whatever methods are employed, it is always the alienated parent that loses time. The other parent always gains it. So despite having an access of 50% of Dash's time, I soon spent months without him. When Dash was 11, I saw him a total of 24 hours in 1 year. Any sense of security that the PAS child gains through the transference of loyalty is fleeting, however. The destruction of a strong, loving parent-child bond, such as the one Dash and I shared, can only be assimilated one way, and that's through crippling low self-esteem. His friends started to wall themselves off. Dash's teachers saw it. And parents who barely knew me would ask, "Is Dash okay?" How could I really know? But no one ever told me, "My, what a fine young man Dash is growing into." Living with PAS as a parent is also living in fear. It is no different to watching a terminally ill child slowly fading away. Under the guise of freedom, Dash became a child of the community, skateboarding late, hanging with different friends now, allowed to do whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted, except see me. I was Dash's mother, and I knew he was suffering, but I was powerless to do anything but go back to court, and now to try and get other people to help him. For 12 years, I fought this battle. And still, every week, in 100 tiny ways, with cookies left on the doorstep, or a conch shell and other little gifts, with a daily phone call, I gave Dash a commitment I believed he privately relied on, that I would always keep trying to see him, and I would love him no matter what had happened in the past or would happen in the future. No matter what he said, no matter how many times we made plans, which he'd cancel at the last minute, or not be there when I went 2 or 3 times a week to pick him up, I continued to show him what unconditional love was. From the margins of Dash's life, I was keeping his mother alive to him. When people ask me, what fueled me to write this book, I say love. The love I have for my children empowered me in ways I didn't think possible. The inner strength I struggled for, I found because I had to. As I say to my boys, it is not the successes in your life, but how you handle failure, hardship, and tragedy. That will be the true makings of you, the true tests. This test, I wish on no one. But more and more love has returned to center stage in my heart. Emotional abuse of a child is not a disease we have no cure of. We can help children with PAS. Awareness is a start. A Kidnapped Mind is a not-for-profit book with all proceeds going to the Dash Foundation, formed by my husband David and myself, to help increase awareness of the damage caused by alienating a child from a once dearly loved parent. The Dash Foundation focuses on gifting books, and we have some here for you today. Thank you.